1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM. HD3 Baltimore.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
Welcome to the Our Legacy Matters show, where we'll discuss how to secure, maintain, and transfer wealth to future generations. I am your host, Attorney Sherry Fleming. Now let's tune in. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining the Our Legacy Matters show once again. I am your host, Sherry Fleming. And while I am your Maryland estate planning attorney, I am not your attorney. So as I say every week, I encourage you to receive professional advice and assistance. If there is anything that you hear on the show that piques your interest, go out and get some help. And feel free to contact my office, which is 410-316-6800, or connect with us at sherryfleming.com/Our Legacy Matters. Today, we are accepting calls. If anyone wants to call in with a specific question, the number here is 410-481-1010. That number again is 410-481-1010. And we are discussing digital assets in estate planning. And so you may ask, what is a digital asset? And so a digital asset is anything digital that has value, establishes ownership, and is discoverable, meaning we actually can find it and identify it. So a digital asset is anything really, and when we talk about value, it's value to the owner. There are some things, as we discussed last week, that may have monetary value or may have sentimental value. And some things may have sentimental value now, and upon your transition, they may, a monetary value may be developed. So value, we're going to say today, is value to the owner, and it's anything that can be found in a digital space, and it's really a digital representation in of what is tangible in some cases. And so digital assets can include photos, manuscripts, documents, data, cryptocurrency. Digital assets can include, video, books, music, illustrations, emails, email accounts, social media content, gaming content. In a financial world, digital assets can include cryptocurrency, tokens, non-fungible tokens. I don't want to go too deeply into what all of those things are. If you know, you know. If you don't, Google. And so anything that's in a digital space, we are in a world that has transformed drastically over the last 20 years, dare I say even 10. I laugh because I am the upper tier millennial generation, and they like to refer to us as Xennials, stuck between Generation X and Millennials, because we remember a time when TV used to cut off. If you were not fortunate enough to have cable television, which I did not have cable television for the large majority of my youth growing up in the South Bronx, New York, television used to cut off. You would hear the news. You would then sing the Star Spangled Banner. You'll see the American flag waving, and then you'll get that color screen and the salt and pepper noise. And if you fell asleep with the TV on, that would wake you up to let you know that all of the shows stopped playing. And so being from that generation where we saw television cut off, and then we're also the first individuals to really make YouTubing a career, there has been a drastic change in our use of technology and also the way in which we store data. So again, I grew up in a family that took a lot of pictures. And so you will walk into my grandmother's home. There were the really special photos were framed, and you would be able to see all of the pictures as you walk through the house. Then all of the other photos were in the basement, and they were collaged and stapled to the wall or stapled to a piece of something that was put on a wall in a very collage. It looked like wallpaper, actually. And that was how we kept photos, and and we laughed and we got to see old photos. We also had, photo books and all of that great stuff. But somewhere around, the early 2000s, I remember having my own digital camera. Even at my law school graduation in 2008, my grandfather had a wind-up camera, a wind-up disposable camera, and my husband had a digital camera. And so I have been able to really participate and see the transition from having tangible assets into this digital world. And I can honestly say that most of my photos, if not all, are stored digitally. And so the question then becomes, when we're moving into this digital world, what, if any, plans are you making to ensure that those digital assets are protected while you're living so that you have access to them so that they're not misused or abused? And then upon your transition, what plans are you making to safeguard and store your digital assets? And the type of asset that we're discussing, or the various types of assets that I mentioned, will depend on really how you save those things. And so for the monetary assets, what are monetary assets? So most of us, there are very few people who have money under the mattress. Most of us do have our funds in banking institutions. And so you may know that a lot of you are not receiving paper statements anymore that are mailed to you on a monthly basis or periodic basis. I'm a little old school, so I never sign up for online. I still want my paper statements. But even in that, they are forcing me to transition, basically sending me communications that I can't. Paper statements are not an option. If I want paper statements, I need to log on and download them myself. And so what are you doing to make sure that your banking information is safeguarded? Your institution probably has some safety nets and protections. Are you participating in those safety nets and protections? And then access issues for estate planning are a concern. What happens if you transition and someone needs to access those banking accounts? First of all, how do they even know that you have them? That's the first question. What is your plan around ensuring that your loved ones are aware of where all of your assets are held? Do you have a list? Do you have an inventory? Do you have a balance sheet? Is that printed, or is that also stored digitally? Who has access to your password for your computer? Does anyone have access? Who has access to your passcodes for your banking? Should you give them access is a huge question. Have you read the terms and conditions for digital access? And so you can see with all of these questions that I'm asking, I can honestly say I don't have answers. This is an evolving area in estate planning that I don't think anyone has a good grip on yet, but the questions that I'm presenting are really questions for you to really think about and consider. And so I'm going to stick with banking institutions for a little bit and the terms and conditions that everyone checks the box and they hit OK, signing up for the terms and conditions to get access to a lot of these the digital platforms, particularly banking. Did you know that sharing your username and passcode is usually a violation of the terms and conditions of your online accounts? Did you know that? I would encourage you to read in your fun time. It's something that I do in my fun time. Encourage you to look through your terms and conditions. Why is that key for estate planning? Because a lot of us say, okay, well, I'm just going to give my spouse or some other individual access, online access to my passcode. Well, the reality is that becomes very difficult because in a world of cybersecurity, you probably have to change your passcode at a minimum every 6 months. So are you really making updates to where your passcodes are stored for another individual to have them? So that becomes a little impractical. But let's say someone does have access to your passcode for whatever reason. Having them access your digital assets with your passcode could be a violation of the terms and conditions in which, once discovered, that institution doesn't have to give any information. They don't have to participate. There are consequences for violating the terms and conditions for online access. So we come back to the question, how does someone access your digital assets in the event of disability or death? So for the financial institutions, this is where you would have a power of attorney to come be effective for in the event of disability, and a will where the court is granting access in the event of death. And if you have a trustee, meaning you have a trust agreement, that trust should give that trustee access to your digital assets. But have you included all digital assets? So finances, your financial digital assets is a little bit clearer on a way forward for those who would be in charge of your estate if you have done estate planning. So for those of you who say, well, I don't have anything that I really need to transfer, or I've named beneficiaries and that's what my estate plan is. I have items that are gonna pass by joint ownership, as we discussed in prior episodes, and I have assets that are going to transfer by operation of contract with beneficiary designations. So I don't need a will. Yes, you do for this particular purpose, because you still need to give someone authority to access, if not close, all of the digital assets and the digital components to your tangible property that you have. And do you even have an inventory? Have you sat down, pen and paper, or at a keyboard and drafted a list of all the places where you have online access? You would be shocked. Even my grandmother has way too much, way too many username and passwords. So I think that's your first step. Not necessarily writing down your username and passcode, but where do you have access in the digital world? Where have you given access to your life? And so banks is one particular area, but a large area that I do want to spend a considerable amount of time are in social media and on your devices. So we can have a debate about Android and iPhone all we want, but the thing remains true. Not only do you have data stored in clouds on platforms such as with banks and social media, but the device itself has data on it. The device itself. So who has access to your devices? And in a world where technology is increasing, how will they continue to have access? And so I want to give the example of CDs. Me and one of my friends were just talking about this weekend. When we were growing up, CDs was the new technology, was the new thing. I remember at 9 years old getting my first 3 CD disc changer and first 3 CDs that were not for children to listen to. And so CDs were the major method of listening to music. And then by the time I got to college or ending college and starting law school, I had an iPod. But what happened with all of those CDs? So not only did we listen to music on CDs, but we had our movies on DVDs, documents. I went from floppy disks to CDs. Our documents in college were stored on CDs. Where can you find a CD player to date to access those historical documents, those photos, that music? I laughed with my friend because she was like, I'm holding on to my CD player, because I can't even think of where I have movies on DVD and I don't even know where to play them. I think at one point my husband and I were playing them on one of his game systems when our cable at the time went out, and we don't even have cable anymore. We only stream. So I say all of this to say, even if you have data stored in a particular place, technology changes over time. And so even access to that data has to be updated. But at a very basic point today, who has access to your phone? Who, if anyone, has access to your tablet, your computer? What is stored on there? How are you safeguarding it, but also providing someone with access in the event of your death or disability? These are things that you should consider. And I know for me, it didn't really hit me until 2015 when my grandfather passed away, and he never had an iPhone. He only had a flip phone, and he recorded video on flip phone. I don't know how good the video was, but I remember when we moved into my house the year before my current home we moved into, and I realized that I was living the dream that he had desired for me to live. We have a beautiful house, we have beautiful property, and I remember the first time he came to visit, it was Mother's Day weekend, because he was just dead set on just having all of the women and doing something for all of the women in the family, and most, if not all of us, are mothers. And so my family being from New York, New Jersey, they came down to visit, and it was the first time that he saw my house. And he went through every room in the house, recording video on a flip phone. And it wasn't the video that I was looking for. It was really the audio, his commentary that I missed. And my grandfather was a man who respected privacy, but on this particular day, he could care less. And I remember my husband and I had gone to bed, and he hadn't saw our bedroom. And he came in, he knocked on the door politely and was like, I didn't see this room. And he came in and with the flip phone recording, and he recorded every inch of our bedroom. We have an ensuite bathroom, and he was just so in awe. My grandfather grew up as a sharecropper. If you don't know what it is, Google it. And so to grow up as a sharecropper and to want more for yourself. And so he moved to New York wanting more for himself. And he worked extremely hard to ensure that everyone in our family had the best and access to education. And so for him to see that the seed he planted in giving us opportunity was realized, it was just amazing to hear his commentary, the oohs and the ahs, and the look at this. And I don't know who he was recording for with some of the commentary, but my husband and I just, again, in the bed as he walks through our room, and we laughed so hard. We thought it was the funniest thing, and you could hear our laughter on the video. And so when he passed away, just a couple of months later, this was May, and he passed away unexpectedly. And suddenly in August, that's what I immediately thought of. Where's the phone with the video? Where is the phone with the video? Who has access to it? Can we save it? Where are the pictures that he took? Just the opportunity to hear his voice again in the oohs and the ahs and a look at this, and that tub can fit me. And he was a 6'3", a very tall gentleman. And that is what I wanted to make sure that I preserved. And my aunt had the phone, and she has the pictures, and we tried to figure out how to do it. And then we ran into an obstacle because the battery died. Who has a charger? These are the things that I want you to consider with digital assets, the memories that particularly our older generation are keeping and creating. Who has access to those things? And so again, if you have a power of attorney, yes, you have access. If you are named in a will or you're given authority by the court, yes, you have access. But then how do you really preserve and store those memories? That becomes another challenge. Okay. So last week we had a discussion about intellectual property. And so a number of you may have manuscripts, you may have artwork, you may have some things stored on your computer. Who are you giving access to and for what purpose? And so our special guest attorney Tiana Mann mentioned last week that she has manuscripts, or not manuscripts, journals that, her journalist friends know to burn and get rid of. But what happens when that content isn't tangible? What happens when it is digital? How do your loved ones and the people you put in charge know what to delete and discard versus what to store and probably preserve and maybe even copyright so that your estate could have some royalties from it? What are you doing to ensure that your digital assets are transferred and protected? Again, this session is chock full of questions because I cannot say that I have answers for you. I just have experience and a little bit of regret. And so I mentioned to you all that my mother passed away in January. And so she was in a car accident and her phone was with her. So I don't have any of the digital assets from that phone because we don't have the phone. No one even knows where it is. And if it is even viable, it may be damaged. But it has recently come up. She has an active Instagram account. She has an active Facebook account. And on these two accounts are tons of memories. And so what do I have to do to access them? Well, first I had to get authorization from a court, which I did. But herein lies the problem, particularly for those people who may not have wills. My mother estate was probated in South Carolina, and for small estates, you don't get general access and authorization to act upon the deceased. They simply give a court order saying in my case, I'm the only heir and everything that she has goes to me. The specific things that I named, they go to me, and it's a court order, but it doesn't give me general access necessarily to access her social media accounts. So I am in a position where I'm just taking a stab in the dark, trying to locate the powers that be behind Facebook to get access to her Facebook, to be able to download those photos, to be able to download those memories, to be able to close out her account if I wanted to. Quite frankly, I don't have Facebook currently, but I didn't recognize how triggering a memory popping up would be. And so I had one of my mother's closest friends screenshot me a memory that popped up in her history for a message that my mother sent to her, which was so my mother, the language, what she said, how she said it. And she sent it to me, and she was sharing, as we do, sharing in her grief, sharing that moment. And it was a special moment, but it was so triggering. It threw me off for the whole entire day, and I wasn't able to really function. And so how do we protect that? What is necessary? And so we can go along the journey together, because I'll be figuring it out. I do not have general access for her estate because it's closed now. So is what the court provided to me sufficient enough for me to move forward with shutting down or accessing her social media? I have no idea. However, I do want you to know that Apple ID, for if you have an Apple device, if you have Google, if you have Facebook, probably also Instagram, since they're both owned by Meta, they do have legacy settings that you can participate in today. You can go on your accounts. Every account is different, so you're going to have to figure it out. I'm not going to provide you step-by-step instructions, but go into your iPhone and you can list legacy contacts. I did this not too long ago with my friend and my husband, and they both were like, are you okay? Are you planning on leaving this earth today? And I'm like, no, I'm just setting it up so that if I am ever in a position where I am disabled, or should I transition, you have access to my phone and the data that's on my phone. I also gave a legacy contact setting to the attorney that will take over over my practice because it's necessary. I do have very little. I have apps on my phone for my practice. And so that has to remain confidential. And so everyone needs to know what information remains confidential, what information is personal, and to act accordingly. I have to create a plan around that. So that's your actual device. I am not an Android user. I do not know if Android has legacy settings. I hope that they do. I do know that Apple does. Facebook, again, does. You can name a legacy contact. And for your Google account, I know that they have legacy settings. So I would encourage you, because there are new apps popping up all of the time. So to the extent that you are participating in applications or services, you want to look into whether or not they have legacy settings so that you can list and you can name someone to be in charge of that account upon either disability or death. And so that is one way. You do want to have your estate plan documents that include a clause about digital assets. You want to have your power of attorney that includes a clause about digital assets. But with a lot of the digital assets, or with some of the larger assets, you can name someone as a legacy contact. So be clear on who you want that to be. It is the same discussion that we had a couple of episodes ago with listing an agent. Who is appropriate for having access to your account in a legacy settings environment? What would you want them to do? Do you want them to save the assets? Do you want them to deliver photos to, the people who are in the photos? Do you want them to destroy it? Provide your legacy contact with information. Have discussions around what it means to be a legacy contact. Do you want them to create an in memoriam Facebook page? I know a couple of years ago, I remember seeing one. I did not know that a young lady that I went to we didn't go to law school together. We studied abroad together, and we kept in contact for many, many years. And then one day I see an in memoriam page for her. Her Facebook page was changed into a memoriam. And I just was like, what the heck happened? Unfortunately, she passed away during childbirth, and the family decided to keep the page alive and active for the child. They did not know another way at the time, and so they wanted to keep all of the memories in place for the child. And what happened over the course of years is that people began to post on her birthday and at different times on her child's birthday, they would post memories and messages, and it became something very beautiful for that particular family. That's the way in which they probably still use it. Again, I don't have Facebook, so I'm not sure. But that's something that's plausible. And so I give all of this information for one purpose. This is the true purpose of this show. I need you to stop, think, and consider everything that you utilize, that you can touch with your five senses, that is in a cloud, in the metaverse, in the internet streets. Think about everything that you touch with your physical presence, and what are these things? And when you are no longer here to touch it, how do you want those things to be transferred or someone else to have access to it? So thank you for joining me today. You can listen to the replay of this show at sherryfleming.com/Our Legacy Matters. And I look forward to connecting with you next week. Thanks for listening to the Our Legacy Matters show. Connect with me, Attorney Sherry Fleming, at I Am Sherry Fleming on all social media platforms, or at sherryfleming.com/Our Legacy Matters, or you can call us at 410-316-6800. Make sure you tune in next week for another discussion, because our legacy matters.
Soul at Night on the new 1010 WOLB.